You can't keep me cooped up in here, okay? I am a peacock. You gotta let me fly.
Hey there. Welcome to the Poppycock Podcast. Nothing matters. I'm not an expert on anything, and the things I'm talking about really won't change your life. So just turn your brain off and enjoy the ride. I want to talk about The Predator. Now, it's a franchise that is close to my heart and many other hearts of many other wonderful people in the world. I think in the 80s, you had Arnold in arguably some of his peak physical perfection, where he was making movies that were slightly self-aware, but not so ridiculous that it was like The Expendables. You've got Carl Weathers in peak fitness, a great cast of characters, and they are all squaring off against a monster designed by Stan Winston, who is the LeBron James of creature design. As Doug Jones is to being put in weird costumes, he is to designing weird costumes, or he was, rest in peace. Even the people that trained at the Stan Winston School have gone on to found some of the greatest creature effects and costume shops in the business that we still see active in superhero movies even. Now, since the 80s, Predator has had some rough times. Predator 2 is still pretty good. You trade the jungle of, I think, Venezuela for the concrete jungle, crazy times, riots going on, just a cop trying to chase down some bad guys, and then he's facing down a crab-faced lizard alien wearing a stripper's fishnet stockings, wearing a bionicle mask. I mean, it's a crazy town. Predators, which is way better than I think people give it credit, honestly. Great premise, great cast all around. Walton Goggins, you've got, just Lawrence Fishburne. I always remember this guy because he looks like Galligan, dude I served with in the Army. What did I always say he looked like? There we go. Cast, Adrian Brody. Oh, God. Oh, Danny Trejo was in that one, too. Son of a gun. Who would have thought? Anyway, but then you get into, The Predator. You get an Alien versus Predator, and things get cheesy. And I think that the Predator franchise kind of forgot what it was originally. I mean, it's a pretty basic setup. It's the same setup as every other horror movie, and I think people forget that it's not built on an action movie backbone. It's built on a horror movie backbone. Yeah, it has action hero stuff, but it's like a mashup, really. It isn't just a straight action movie. It's like what a lot of my buddies used to do. We would be, off in the field somewhere, or we'd all huddle up in the barracks on a weekend, and we'd just be, shooting the breeze. We'd watch a movie, and we'd discuss it. And more often than not, people would turn on a horror movie. I hate them, but, when you're tired and you don't really want to get up off of the couch, you watch whatever someone just turned on. And we would discuss, man, just imagine if someone had a gun in this situation. It wouldn't even be an issue. If someone had tactical training, this alien would not be an issue, or this monster, or the mummy, or a ghost, or what have you. I mean, in most horror movie scenarios, I found myself being physically fit, weapons trained, and the son of a pastor. I figured, I'm pretty much ready to face down the whole spectrum of supernatural entities that are thrown into these movies. An alien, obviously, holy water's not going to do a whole lot. Unless, it's a Ridley Scott film, in which case maybe they are God and they'll acknowledge that, or they'll hate it. I don't know what Ridley's doing. His movies are beautiful, but his plots are a little wonky. Anyway, Predator kind of forgot what it was. It is a horror movie with action movie characters stuck in it. Because Dutch and his gang, they are an elite spec ops unit. They come in, they're contracted to save people and get out. They do not do assassinations, and that's why Carl Weathers had to trick them into coming out to Venezuela, into taking down the guerrillas, to think they were extracting a VIP, when in reality, they were just mowing down some resistance for the CIA. And he's not cool with that. And it's a good premise. But you find yourself, by the time you get to The Predator, it's not a horror movie so much anymore. It's just an action movie. And it's a funny movie. They swapped it. They made it an action movie with a comedy in it, and the comedy is gold. It is like, I mean, you got half of Key and Peele in there, you're already guaranteed some laughs. And the whole cast is great. Thomas Jane is funny, and it's just there's ridiculous scenarios. The cast plays off each other well, but you shouldn't come out of a Predator movie thinking, wow, that was a funny movie. And you also shouldn't walk out thinking, wow, that third act was really poorly written. But here we are. Alien vs. Predator, I sort of give a free pass because they are terrible movies and they were never going to be anything other than terrible movies. If you like them, that's totally fine. But they are sort of like a spin-off. They're not really supposed to be in the same vein. Roxy, Roxy, Roxy. You are the loudest, most obnoxious co-host I've ever had. Pro tip, if your wife says she wants a dog, say no. Just, oh, don't act like that hurt your feelings. I don't want to hear it. All you do is poop and pee indoors, chase squirrels outdoors, and make that whistle sound. Apparently it's a German Shepherd trait. Steer clear of those. But the Predator franchise is supposed to be those what-if scenarios. What if the people stuck in a scary mansion this time weren't just a bunch of dumb teenagers who wanted to get it on? What if this time they were highly trained military personnel loaded up to the wazoo with ammunition and bad intentions? And that's what makes the Predator so much scarier than Freddy and Jason and almost any other villain you have thrown at you in horror movies, because those people prey on the weak and the innocent. The Predator hunts predators. That's what makes the Predator so cool, and that's why I think the key to making a good Predator movie in a modern era is, I think the reason people are getting it wrong is they're just overthinking it. Because it's a really simple setup. You find a location that is beautiful, but also clearly dangerous. You make it an area that's remote enough that you believe that they are isolated and that they cannot get help. And you make it a place that when you see destruction, it's cool, but you don't feel bad. Like in Man of Steel, when they're destroying, Metropolis and Smallville, you're like, oh, wow, people are not going to be able to go home or go to work. And that's taking you out of the joy of watching whatever you're going to be watching. So in this case, you put them in a jungle, you put them in the desert, you put them in the Arctic for all you care, It just needs to be a place that it makes sense that the Predator could stalk them and not be seen. Because, it's kind of the whole thing. It's a hunt. You get a group of characters. I mean, in the first Predator, they're an elite military personnel. In the second Predator, it's a mixture of sort of secret agents and LA cops. So you've already got people that are competent. These are not weak, helpless people. In Predators, they're all criminals. They're killers. They're people who are soldiers or murderers for some creed or call. And a lot of them are bad people, which I think most of the main characters in a Predator movie, from someone's perspective, are dangerous, terrible people. And it's just a matter of whether or not they're fighting the people that are a problem to you, or if they're fighting your people. I mean, they have like Russian gangsters in Predators, and they have a serial killer, and they have freedom fighters. Like, these are people who are competent in their craft, and their craft is making sure that the enemy doesn't wake up the next day. That's what makes when the Predator stalks them and takes them out so intimidating. When a Predator draws its blade and fights a high-level Yakuza enforcer who's wielding a katana, you are intrigued. Because you're like, if this was a random dude, there's no way he lives. But now, maybe he actually does enough damage and buys enough time that his friends can accomplish whatever they're going for. There's a level of believability to it that there isn't in horror movies. Because horror movies operate on a logic that people will do dumb things. As someone who lives in a sort of older home, yeah, you're going to hear a weird, creepy noise downstairs, and my wife is going to say, go check it out. And I'm going to check it out. But at the same time, I also operate on a hair trigger at all times where I might punch people, which is why watching like horror movies with dates was always difficult, because I'm flinching in my chair, drawing a fist to punch the screen. And it's just not sexy when you almost elbow someone in a reflex. And I think, the Predator the 2018 movie, it had a lot of the right stuff. It had dangerous people, people that are sort of washed out. It put them, up against this horrible threat of a predator. And it did the same thing that I think the Die Hard franchise is trying to do, where it tried to up the ante. Instead of the predator, it's a super predator who hunts other predators. But the whole point is that the predator, as a baseline, is already capable of killing people that are neck and neck with Arnold Schwarzenegger circa the 80s as far as danger. I mean, Arnold and his crew walked up to a Venezuelan, guerrilla fighter camp and just kicked down the doors and were delivering one-liners and death in equal parts. He kicks open the doors, knock, knock, light machine gun fire. Guy tries to run, throws his Bowie knife, pins the guy to a wall. Stick around. That's what's wild, because the villain of the story, the predator, ultimately needs to be a scarier version of your hero. You've got Donald Glover in Predator 2. Arnold Schwarzenegger is Dutch in the first Predator. You've got all these other characters throughout the franchise, and the comics and the games and the movies and the spin-offs, which are still going. They just released a brand new Predator game. People want to be involved in this franchise, but people just kind of forgot what makes it click, what makes it really connect with people. And it scratches an itch that you can't get in any other franchise. It's a horror setting that's beautiful, where someone who otherwise would be the predator is the prey, and it's them defending themselves. And it's sort of like a fantasy almost for people who are like doomsday preppers, and they have a gun collection bigger than my DVD collection, which is expansive. And they're just they're waiting for something, and they sort of play through their head, okay, what is the scariest thing I can survive? And this is that thing. This is what happens when someone who's well prepared and well armed goes up against the worst case scenario. How do you win? Do you win? In the case of Dutch, you Home Alone your way through the jungle and set traps, and you fight a crab-faced alien stripper boy. I never understood the fishnets. I know that canonically within their fictional universe that causes their invisibility, but I don't think if I put on fishnets I would be invisible. I think I would want to be, but I mean, who knows? It might make my butt really pop. I think it'd do wonders for my calves and my thighs, for sure. The rest of me, I don't know. I don't think it would complement my shoulders. I think I would look like a fish that got caught in a net. That's just me. I'm also not a 7-foot-tall lizard person, though. So, to each their own. I think The Predator is a really good example of where there was some good and some bad, because they throw in a plot line. Thank you. They throw in a plot line where a kid gets predator tech and accidentally activates it and calls in a spaceship and lets the predators know that, someone is activating their stuff. And I don't think anyone has accepted the idea that a child can magically figure out something that adults can't. And oops, I accidentally started an alien thing. I don't think any movie after the 90s anyone was willing to accept that as a reality. Roxy, are you murdering your stuffed animal? Well, if she starts getting the flesh off of it and hanging it from trees, then it'll be right on topic. Roxy, commit murder on your own time. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you.
I definitely did not tell you to... Wow. It wasn't a horror movie. It was an action-adventure movie with a... It was a story about a dad and his kid. It was a story about misfit soldiers. It was a comment on PTSD and struggling soldiers coming back to reality. It was just a mess. And at no point was it really a horror movie. There was great gore. There was great action where you were like, whoa, that was a crazy thing. There's a point where the Super Predator's claw blades come up through the floor, right up through a guy's junk. And I physically, jumped in my seat and cringed. It connected with me. I was disgusted by the gore. But I never felt like... The only reason I was really worried about the characters is because I knew in these type of movies it's rare for all the characters to survive. So I think you need a movie where more than one or two people does survive, more than just a love interest, and where they do something well. And I think that it wouldn't hurt, since the franchise has taken a few hits. We saw it with the Terminator franchise. If you keep using Arnold as your drawing point, he took a lot of time off from acting, and when he came back, he didn't make the best choices. He's not as big of a box office draw anymore. There are a lot of kids out here who didn't grow up on the heyday of the 80s and 90s action heroes. And first of all, it's a shame. But now you have to rethink who those actors are that you can draw people in with. I mean, yeah, it was a different choice to go with the second Predator movie, where it wasn't a buffed out hero. But it differentiated itself, and it worked. In Predators, he was buff, but he was shredded more than he was bulky. And in The Predator, you had a bunch of people in various amounts of shape, but none of them ever really just like stuck out as, wow, that's a cool action hero. I think if you get a Hemsworth up in there, you either get a Hemsworth up in there or you get Dwayne Johnson. You drop them in some forest somewhere. You let them do their thing. You let the charm come on. You make it look like an action movie, and then after the first act, you introduce the terror of what the Predator can do. You don't need to put that much of a new twist on it. Say that he has a thing where like he doesn't kill you and then takes the spine out. He'll just come in and he'll just chop an arm off and leave, and he takes you apart piece by piece. Then you have people trying to survive that are missing an arm or something. You're trying to care for your injured and escape. That's a new level, but it doesn't make it where you're like fighting a Marvel character, you know? It's not the Hulk. It's not so ridiculous, it's just scary. And you're watching people who are scary in their own right be scared and have to think their way out of a situation. I think that's how you make the Predator scary again. It doesn't have to be a horror movie level of scared, but the characters and the stakes need to be where you don't know what happens. We need a movie where either more than one or two people survives, or a movie where the Predator actually kills everyone. You need to set the stakes that in this franchise, you cannot predict that Joe Action Hero and Lady Buxom are going to be the last two players on the field. You need to tell the audience that these stakes can change. Game of Thrones, for all of its faults and all of its weaknesses, did show that the people you're rooting for can just die. And while we don't need quite that level in our elevated action, and as much as I hate to say it, I think Michael Bay would be perfect for like a Terminator movie or maybe even a Predator movie, because he has that weird love of military, almost fan fiction, where they go up against the enemy and they come out on top. And if you saw 13 Hours, you know he can be a competent film director. And he has a style that's very much of the 80s and 90s, where it's ridiculous caricatures of people, crazy explosions, one-liners, wild camera work, and women that are in arguably way less clothing than they should ever be in. So you get someone in there to sort of rein him in a little bit and make a movie like 13 Hours, one that people actually want to watch instead of pretty much any Transformers movie. But you get something like that. You get a franchise that says that it's willing to kill off. You kill off a Hemsworth, you know? You just wipe them all out, and the Predator leaves happy. And then you do one where a couple people survive. And then maybe you switch it up and you do combinations of the two. Or you drop little, like Marvel did in between their movies. They'd have like a short film about like Agent Coulson or something like that. Tells little stories to flesh out the world, and also could have it where a lot of people die or where someone survives over and over again. It doesn't need to be the MCU. It doesn't need to be an action franchise, because the action characters are there, but the action movie is meant to be the start of the film, and then it accidentally becomes horror, and now you're watching action heroes realize they're in a horror movie, and they don't just become horror movie characters where they become idiots. They do things that their characters would do, but now they aren't the scariest person on screen. And that's what makes the Predator cool, is because the Predator is the only thing that can make an action hero scared. It's not kidnapping your girlfriend. It's not holding the president hostage. It's there to hunt you. And the only way you get out is to be smarter or deadlier. That's what makes it cool. I think that's what the Predator lost. When we made it our friend in Alien vs. Predator, when we started throwing in tons of Predators in Predators, I think that really You just need, maybe make it 2 predators. You make it where the hero kills a predator after wounding one and forgets about it. You keep it off screen long enough, and then that second wounded predator comes in and you kill Chris Hemsworth, or you kill Dwayne Johnson, which never happens in movies. And you show, hey, sometimes the heroes lose, and we're brave enough to do it. I think that's how you make a Predator movie. You just got to be as scary as it would be to face, an alien stripper with thermal vision and a shoulder-mounted laser gun. Sorry, plasma caster. I don't want to offend any of the Die Hard fans. Although I think when I mentioned the Die Hard is also a failed franchise, I probably already hit the Die Hard fans. So yeah, if for some strange reason Steven Spielberg, Michael Bay, or any big level, movie-making genius here's a piece of this, please give us a movie that shows that the ugly non-hero can survive, where maybe 3 or 4 people survive, or where no one does, and the Predator wins. Because at the end of the day, I love laughing at a movie. I love seeing cool action set pieces. I love crazy special effects, practical and CGI. I'm a movie nerd. I love that stuff. I live for the behind the scenes and the art books and the videos about how they did the special effects and the stunts. I'm all about that. But when I'm in that movie theater and I'm sitting down and I've got my popcorn, or when I'm sitting on the couch and I've had a really rough week and I just need to watch something entertaining that makes me forget everything that isn't on that screen, I want to see the toughest fictional characters you can imagine going up against something that for the first time in their lives makes them realize they are not the scariest thing on the planet. And then I want to see stuff happen that I wouldn't expect to see happen. Sometimes that means killing an A-list action hero. Sometimes it means letting the dorky guy survive. And, a couple extra people to prove that it's not always going to come down to the final showdown between the Dutch character, and by that I mean the Arnold-esque character, not someone who's Dutch in their origins. I need to believe that any of these characters could live and any of these characters could die. And I need them to believe it too. Or because they're actors, I need them to convince me that their characters believe it. Because, I know it's not a real thing. So yeah, that is how you make Predator good again. It's how you make it scary again. And it's how you convince people that it matters. You draw them in with an A-list action star and a respected director, and you keep them coming back for more because the first movie did things they didn't expect. And who knows? Maybe we can finally get that cameo from Arnold Schwarzenegger again, because they've been trying to do that since the 3rd movie, and he's just like, no, I don't like the script. I want more money. I just want to hear him say, get to the chopper, now! One more time. That, or I need a Turbo Man sequel. Jingle All the Way, Part 2. He's got a, Jewish friend, and he's trying to figure that out. But they have to get a Turbo Man doll again. Mostly because I love the, put the cookie down, now! Line. It's just... that, or give me the Terminator versus Predator movie that I've been asking for since I was 12. Or Rambo versus the Predator, which I've been asking for since 2 weeks ago when I had a dream about it. Man, that Predator game puts weird thoughts in my mind. Well, hope you enjoyed the podcast, and if you didn't, well, you listened to it anyway, so I win either way. Have a great one. Or don't. This is America. Unless you're listening to it from another country, in which case, you do you, Caillou. I take it back. Give me a movie where the Predator murders Caillou. That's how you make it good.
Pack your things. We're leaving.